Imagine standing in a muddy trench, surrounded by the rotting corpses of your friends, rats crawling over your boots, the constant thunder of artillery shells shaking your very bones. You haven't seen sunlight in weeks. You haven't slept properly in months. And tomorrow morning, when that whistle blows, you'll climb out of this hole and run straight into a wall of machine gun fire. This was the daily reality for millions of young men between 1914 and 1918. Welcome back to the Relic Traveler, where today we're diving into the most catastrophic war humanity had ever seen. A war so brutal, so devastating, that people genuinely believed it would be the war to end all wars. They were tragically wrong. The year is 1914, and the world stands at the peak of modern civilization. Cities gleam with electric lights, automobiles cruise through paved streets, and humanity has never been more advanced, more cultured, more refined. The major powers of Europe look at their empires with pride, their armies with confidence, and their futures with optimism. But beneath this polished surface, something sinister is brewing. Alliances are being formed in secret, old grudges are festering, military arsenals are expanding at an alarming rate. Everyone knows a storm is coming, they just don't realize it will be a hurricane that drowns an entire generation in blood. France is still bitter about losing territory to Germany in a previous conflict. Germany, meanwhile, is hungry for more, its ambitions growing as rapidly as its military might. The German Empire has been building a massive naval fleet, and this is making the British extremely nervous. Britain has ruled the waves for centuries, and they're not about to let some upstart challenge their supremacy. Meanwhile, the Austro-Hungarian and Ottoman empires are holding together vast territories filled with different ethnic groups who are increasingly restless, increasingly angry, and increasingly willing to fight for their independence. Russia is backing many of these independence movements, adding fuel to an already volatile fire. Behind closed doors in royal courts and government chambers, everyone is talking about everyone else, making secret deals, drawing up war plans, waiting for the spark that will ignite the powder keg. And then it happens. In the Balkans, in a region of Austria-Hungary populated by Serbs and Bosnians who despise their imperial overlords, Archduke Franz Ferdinand decides to pay a visit. Franz Ferdinand is the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, and his decision to tour this hostile territory is either incredibly brave or monumentally stupid. To make matters worse, he rides through the streets of Sarajevo in an open-top car with his route published in newspapers for everyone to see. It's like putting a target on his own back and then wondering why someone might take a shot. And take a shot they do. A group of young assassins, armed with bombs and pistols, position themselves along the Archduke's route. As his motorcade passes, one throws a bomb, but the bomb bounces off the car and explodes behind him, injuring several officers in the following vehicle. You would think this would be enough to convince Franz Ferdinand to get out of town immediately. You would be wrong. Instead, the Archduke decides to visit the injured officers in the hospital. He gets back in the same open-top car and heads out into the streets again. Then fate intervenes in the most bizarre way imaginable. The driver takes a wrong turn and has to stop to reverse. And where does he stop? Right next to one of the failed assassins, a young man named Gavrilo Princip, who's standing on the street corner, probably thinking his mission is failed. Princip can't believe his luck. He pulls out his pistol and fires 2 shots. The Archduke and his wife are both killed. In that moment, with 2 bullets from a pistol that nearly jammed, the world changes forever. Austria-Hungary is absolutely furious. They're convinced that the Serbian government was behind the assassination, and they might be right. They run to their ally Germany and say they want to declare war on Serbia. Germany, eager for a fight and confident in their military superiority, gives them the green light. Austria-Hungary sends Serbia a list of demands so extreme that Serbia could never accept them all. When Serbia refuses, Austria-Hungary declares war. It's exactly what they wanted. But here's where things spiral out of control. Russia has positioned itself as the protector of Serbia and other Slavic peoples. So when Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia, Russia mobilizes its massive armies. Germany sees Russian mobilization as an act of war and declares war on Russia. France has an alliance with Russia, so they mobilize against Germany. Germany now faces enemies on two fronts, East and West, the nightmare scenario they'd been planning for. Britain has a complicated relationship with France and initially tries to stay out of it, but Germany has a plan that will drag Britain into the war whether they like it or not. Germany's master plan is brilliant in its simplicity and terrifying in its ambition. They know Russia is huge and slow to mobilize, so while Russia is still getting ready, Germany will throw everything they have at France, knock them out of the war in a lightning-fast campaign, then turn all their forces east and crush Russia. It's a plan that requires perfect timing, perfect execution, and one crucial element: speed. Germany cannot afford to waste time battering through France's heavily fortified border, so they decide to go around it, through Belgium. There's just one problem. Belgium is neutral. Its neutrality is guaranteed by international treaty, including by Britain. Germany doesn't care. They ask Belgium for permission to march 750,000 troops through their country. Belgium, to their eternal credit, refuses. They may be small, but they have pride, and they're not about to roll over for German ambitions. When Germany invades anyway, Belgium fights back with surprising effectiveness, slowing down the German advance. And Britain, watching all this unfold, is horrified. Germany hasn't just invaded a neutral country, they've violated the very foundation of international law. Britain declares war on Germany, and suddenly the conflict has expanded beyond anyone's initial calculations. As German forces push through Belgium, they commit terrible atrocities against civilians. They wear intimidating spiked helmets and sometimes even skulls on their uniforms. The Allied powers have a field day with propaganda, painting Germany as barbaric monsters, threatening civilization itself. This propaganda reaches across the Atlantic to the United States, where public opinion starts to shift against Germany. The French march to meet the German advance, but they're marching to their doom. French soldiers wear bright blue coats and red trousers, uniforms more suited to the Napoleonic Wars than modern combat. The Germans, hidden in positions with rifles and artillery, cut them down in devastating numbers. This is the harsh reality. All the nations entered this war with outdated tactics from a previous era, tactics based on cavalry charges and linear formations. But warfare has changed. Machine guns can fire hundreds of rounds per minute. Artillery can hurl explosive shells kilometers away with deadly accuracy. Barbed wire can stop advancing troops in their tracks. The old ways of fighting are suicide, but it will take millions of deaths for the generals to learn this lesson. In the east, Russia mobilizes much faster than expected and invades German territory. Austria-Hungary is supposed to handle Russia, but they're spectacularly incompetent. Their chief of staff makes one disastrous decision after another, ignoring German advice and then running back for help when things go wrong. Austria-Hungary can't even defeat tiny Serbia, getting beaten back repeatedly in humiliating fashion. Germany has to divert troops from the Western Front to bail out their struggling ally and fight the Russians themselves. At the Battle of Tannenberg, Germany almost completely destroys Russia's Second Army, but this victory comes at a cost. Troops that were supposed to be racing through France are now fighting in the east. Back on the Western Front, German forces advance deep into France. They get close enough to Paris that they can almost see the Eiffel Tower. Victory seems within reach, but then the French stop running. Their commander orders everyone to hold the line and fight. A massive battle erupts, and in the chaos, a gap opens in the German lines. The Allies exploit this gap, threatening to surround the German forces. The Germans have no choice but to retreat. They dig into defensive positions. The Allies dig in opposite them. Then both sides try to outflank each other, moving north in what becomes known as the race to the sea. When they reach the English Channel, there's nowhere left to go. They face each other across a no-man's land, with continuous trenches running from the Swiss border to the Belgian coast. And so begins the nightmare that will define this war: trench warfare. Picture it, two parallel lines of trenches, sometimes just a few hundred meters apart, with a devastated wasteland between them called no man's land. The trenches themselves are horrific places to live, mud everywhere, often knee-deep, sometimes deep enough to drown in. The bodies of dead soldiers, sometimes left unburied for weeks, standing water filled with chemicals and waste, rats the size of cats feeding on corpses, disease